This is Rob Tebbutt for ID Boxing. Delighted to be joined by Eddie Hearn. We're here at the Matchroom Boxing Gym in Essex. How are you, Eddie?
Very well, Robert. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I didn't know you were still interviewing, because I've noticed that you've got more of a sort of senior position now, almost like producer. No?
I still do the important ones, which is why I haven't spoke to you in a while.
Like it, Rob.
How are you, Ed? Been a while.
I'm feeling good, mate. Really excited, obviously, for Ben Eubank. Sometimes you see those graphics come out, 11 weeks to go, 10 weeks to go, and then you think this Saturday, 1 week to go. Huge fight, huge occasion. One of the biggest I think we've ever been involved with. Huge build-up, BBC One, prime time next Friday. Big documentary on the fight. Press conferences, workouts, huge weigh-in. It's going to be mega.
You mentioned that kind of BBC and the cross-promotion. It's something that I think you'll agree in DAZN's kind of short history you haven't seen for a fight so far. A measure of the magnitude and the scale of this fight?
Yeah, but not only that, just the process of time. You know, I think it's been well documented that those conversations have been ongoing for a long time. There's been a lot of support digitally from the BBC and across 5 Live as well. But the conversations continue in terms of content. DAZN are in a very good position where they're proactive in placing content and shoulder programming with big broadcasters, and it's not just a case of, you know, previously there was a bit of resistance to that because one broadcaster wouldn't want another broadcaster to have that fighter on the platform, even if it was documentaries or shoulder programming. That doesn't exist here, and everyone gets a tremendous deal. You know, BBC get a thrilling documentary, prime time. We get obviously the exposure for the fight, and it's a very straightforward, common sense partnership that I think we'll see more of.
Pay-per-view in the UK, available in pubs?
Yeah, there'll be an announcement on that from DAZN. Obviously, it's something that they're working very hard towards. They've only been in the pay-per-view market in the UK, I think KSI was the first one a couple of weeks ago. So it's an ongoing process, but obviously the key is to make it available to as many people as possible.
Talk to us about what goes on in making that happen, putting it in the pubs. Why is it like? Talk to us about the deal for doing that.
In a common sense, on a very basic explanation terms, the pubs will have a deal with Sky, and ultimately DAZN is not on the Sky platform, so therefore to bring in DAZN into the platform could cut across that deal with Sky, and there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basis of it.
A lot of talk, as always, about pay-per-view buys. How many are you expecting for Eubank Jr?
I think it's massive. I think this can do anywhere between 600 and 1 million buys. Like, I think on Sky it does 1 million buys. Honestly, like the numbers that we've seen, even across the head-to-heads, the documentaries, just on Matchroom Boxing YouTube, bigger than any fight we've ever seen. Certainly domestically in the UK. And I think next Saturday there won't be many people in the country that won't know this fight is taking place.
Is that pay-per-view buys or subscriptions?
Buys. You know, you make that comment about subscriptions. I'm talking about pay-per-views in the UK. When people talk about the Triple G Canelo, when they added, you know, pay-per-view buys and subscriptions, when you have a subscription platform that's not pay-per-view in every territory, there's still, and I got criticism saying there's still buys. Ultimately, you're subscribing for that fight. So buys for the fight come in different formats, and most of those buys were pay-per-view buys. But of course, there are going to be other markets that aren't pay-per-view, and they're the smaller markets where it may be subscription only. But I'm talking about just pay-per-view buys, and just in the UK.
Let's talk about the fight. Obviously, the main theme that's running through it is the weight. Now, we're still none the wiser with regards to the rehydration clause. I don't suppose there's anything you can tell me about that?
It's in line with the IBF.
Which is £12 at middleweight.
£10. Well, yeah, the new one. Yeah, but the old one. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you understand why people are talking about fighter safety? I know Eubank Sr. came out recently and said, you know, he was worried about the welfare of his son. Do you understand those concerns?
Not really. I mean, I think the bigger danger is with Conor Benn, in all honesty. I mean, when a fighter moves up 1.5 weight divisions, it's a big disadvantage. You're talking about Chris Eubank Jr. coming down 3 pounds. Now, I understand how difficult that can be, especially if a fighter struggles to make 160. But his team, the British Boxing Board of Control that have been across his checkways, his trainer, are very comfortable with where he is in that respect. I think he's weighed 158 point something quite recently in a fight. So he has to make that weight. If he doesn't, there'll be financial penalties. If he doesn't, he'll look a bit silly after the Instagram posts. But I think it's a bigger disadvantage to Conor Benn stepping up the divisions. He's going to be the smaller man on the night. But also, you see him today, and he's 163 pounds. He looks like he's ready to weigh in for welterweight. You know, so I don't see the concerns. I mean, first of all, Chris Eubank Sr. was concerned for Conor Benn. You know, when this fight got discussed. Now he's concerned for Junior. So it's up to the teams to make sure that everyone's prepared and is ready for the fight.
Are the dads going to be involved in fight week?
The dads? Well, Nigel's been here the whole camp. You know, Chris Senior hasn't, but I would expect him to be there on fight week. One, because I think he'll support his son, and two, I think he'll want to be involved. You know, it's a momentous occasion, and both dads will be desperate to win.
Final one on Eubank Jr. Ben. For Conor Benn, of course, he's well ranked with all the governing bodies at 147 pounds. Where does he go after this fight?
Back to 147, I think. I mean, when you weigh these fights up, obviously this fight financially is huge for Conor, but I think it's an easier fight than most of the elite fights at 147. I think it's an easier fight, of course, than Crawford and Spence. But even, you know, obviously Boots Ennis as well, but even Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, I mean, these are elite welterweights. So I think this fight, which obviously pays a lot more money, is actually an easier fight than those. But the future for Conor Benn is at 147 pounds.
Moving away from next weekend and on to, well, we're still waiting for the announcement for the biggest fight in heavyweight boxing, of course, Tyson Fury versus Manuel Charr. What's the latest on the heavyweight division?
But you're probably going to get that fight sooner than that announcement sooner than Fury AJ. Look, it's frustrating. I mean, I don't want to talk too negatively because honestly, like the process with Queensberry has actually been surprisingly good. And that's a positive to take from it. A lot of what Tyson Fury said today is not true. Firstly, we haven't had the contract for 14 days. Secondly, when we agreed terms for the contract, it took us 8 or 9 days to get a draft. And that's okay because it's a massive fight. But when we got the draft, it was all over the place. And all last week, we was on the phone to Queensberry every day, getting it in a good place. And on Monday, just gone, we sent them a final version of the contract. On Monday also, Tyson Fury said, you haven't signed, so fight's off, Udosa, etc. So we kind of like, AJ's not down tools, but obviously it's not happening. And then kept the communication going with George Warren. And on Wednesday he said, look, let me speak to Tyson and see if I can get him back in the fight. And we said, okay. And then yesterday afternoon, they sent us a red line of our final contract with their changes. Again, no problem. This is just what happens. That is being reviewed last night and today, and we'll go back with our comments on the changes today, which again is like, it took them 2 days to make their comments. Like, it'll probably take us a day, but no one's fucking around or trying to be clever or silly. So we're in a position now where George Warren, who I spoke to at midnight last night, said, let me convince Tyson to give us some more time. Next thing, you see him on Instagram saying, right, you got today. It's like, today? You've just come back to us with your changes. So I don't think that I can fault anything from Queensberry, and they can honestly fault anything from Matchroom in the process that's been undertook. This fight, Eubank-Benn, from the sending of the first draft, probably took 2.5 months to get signed. You're talking about 2 weeks of negotiations and discussions. And that was similar, where terms were agreed for that fight. But it just takes time, especially with a fight of that magnitude. And I think he will fight Manuel Charr. I mean, they offered Derek Chisora to fight today, this morning. And we're like, we don't know where we stand. But I expect Tyson Fury to come out tonight and say, you dossers, you didn't sign again today, you're a coward, etc. Don't forget, AJ signed for this fight 9 or 10 months ago, and Fury pulled out because of the arbitration. So he has no problem. And he's had to accept they wouldn't move on the split, they wouldn't move on the rematch, they wouldn't move on the date, which it's a disadvantage to AJ. But we accept all that. But commercially, it's got to be right as well.
We've had the Monday deadline, we've had the deadline today. When does it become too late on your point of view? It's 9 weeks on Saturday for the fight to happen. For things like promoting the fight, drug testing, things like that, 9 weeks is not a long time for a fight of that magnitude.
From a promotional point of view, no problem. You could have another 2 weeks to do this fight. The tickets are going to sell out in 10 seconds. the fight is absolutely huge. They're both in the UK. The fight's happening in the UK. The press conference will be in the UK. But ideally, you'd always want 8 weeks, which is 10 days away or just under, right? So, but again, I don't know why these deadlines keep getting imposed on certain days from nowhere, because Queensberry aren't putting us under any pressure to sign today, or because they know we can't, because they're waiting for a response from us. We're waiting for a response from them. So. But of course, we all want to move forward at pace. But to be honest with you, like the instant deadlines don't do anyone any favour, because what we should have probably done on Monday after Fury cancelled the fight, we should have come out and gone, we're not wasting our time anymore. We're fighting on December 17th. But we kept going. George convinced me to keep going, and that's what we're doing. And until we get told again, it's off again. And but I think. You see from the comments now, I think people are starting to wise up a little bit, but also when he announces Manuel Charr, I hope it would get the same response that AJ would get if he fought Manuel Charr, even off the back of 2 defeats.
You mentioned 9-10 months ago the fight was signed, the fight was sealed. All we heard back then was the fight would go to Saudi Arabia because that was where the biggest money was. This fight is going to happen in the UK. If it does happen, what changed?
About where the fight took place. Just a quick turnaround. Saudi have just done a fight. They want the undisputed fight between Usyk and Fury. You're leaving a lot of money on the table doing this fight in the UK, but money wasn't the be-all and end-all for this fight, for AJ, and I guess maybe for Tyson Fury as well. Still a huge amount of money in the fight, but the Middle East also wasn't an option within that time frame.
Final one from me on all things heavyweight. Anthony Joshua just mentioned there, potentially box on December the 17th. If it's not Tyson Fury, as you expect him to box Manuel Charr, who do we see for Anthony Joshua?
Well, I was going to say Manuel Charr, but no. Look, I think all the guys that we talk around, same sort of mix for Dillian Whyte. Areola, Otto Warlin, these kind of guys. I think AJ's entitled to, and it won't be a walkover, but he's just boxed Usyk back-to-back twice. And he's always been involved in tough fights against highly ranked fighters. So he'll be against an opponent that can be a solid comeback fight. But honestly, he's prepared to fight Tyson Fury, and hopefully we can get that fight made.
What's going on with Dillian Whyte?
Talking to him about a fight at the end of November. Hope to have some news on that soon. See the link up with Buddy McGirt, which I think is fantastic, and looking forward to seeing Dillian back in the ring. Okay, well, Eddie Hearn, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to ID Boxing. Before I let you go, you owe me 50 quid. Do I? I don't have any cash on me. I'll give it to you next week. What was it for again? So you bet me that Alexander Usyk would be over £230 in Saudi. Did I? Yeah. And he was nowhere near? He was nowhere near. No. So don't give me the cash. Shows what I know. I will WhatsApp you the link to give it to charity. Can you please do that today for me? That'd be much more pleasing. Always a pleasure. Cheers, Thanks so much, Eddie.